You're in the water loop.
Welcome to Waterloop, the podcast exploring solutions for sustainability and equity in water. I'm the host, Travis Loop. This is episode number 193, NFL Becomes More Blue. The NFL has long had an environment program to mitigate the impact of its major events and leave a green legacy in host cities. But over the last few years, water stewardship has become a more prominent part of the portfolio, particularly in conjunction with the Super Bowl, as discussed in this episode with Jack Groh, director of the NFL Environment Program. He explains how the NFL works with Force Blue, an organization of military special operations veterans, to conduct water projects, including restoring coral reef in Florida, helping the kelp forest in California, and removing invasive snails in an Arizona river. Jack also talks about engaging the NFL fans to raise awareness of current water issues and increase stewardship. Before starting the episode, I want to quickly mention that Waterloop is a nonprofit media outlet that depends on its supporters. This episode was made possible by Open Water. Open Water is ultra-purified, electrolyte-packed canned water in BPA-free aluminum packaging. Recyclable? Check. Climate neutral? You bet. And they even encourage you to fill up at the tap whenever possible. One of my favorite things about Open Water is it is made in the US and shipped from dozens of warehouses to minimize transportation emissions. Check them out at drinkopenwater.com and pick up a can at a store near you.
You're in the water loop.
I'm happy to be here talking to you at the Green Sports Alliance Summit in Seattle. I'm a huge sports fan. I'm a big NFL fan. Okay. I have to go on the record, Washington Commanders fan.
We won't hold that against you.
No, you can't. You can't. I'm loyal. And then I'm an environmental programs fan. Really fascinated by the environmental programs of the NFL. What does that mean? What's covered by that? What's encompassed by it?
We've got three big areas that we try and cover. The first is operational. How do we lighten the footprint? And there's a number of projects under that piece of it. The second piece is how do we create a legacy in the community? Some type of a green legacy where we make changes in the community, we develop projects, we work side by side with folks so that when we leave, there's something permanent, there's a permanent benefit left. And the third piece of it is how do we engage? How do we engage others in this? And principally, what we look at is we want to engage our sponsors, but not in green marketing. We want to engage our sponsors in hands-on type of projects where they or their staff, their employees, they can engage in projects in the community. And we also want to engage our fans. But again, we don't want to engage our fans through messaging and public service announcements and signage. We want to engage our fans in some way that enhances their experience at the game. Nobody goes to a football game to get educated. People go to a football game to get entertained, to have fun, to forget about to forget about climate change, to forget about all the problems that we're facing. But so how do we take sustainability and use it in a way and engage with fans that makes them tell a story when they go home and say, hey, guess what happened to me at Super Bowl? So that's our objective there. So we got those three big ones that we look at.
When we talk about sustainability and the environment, there's so many different aspects and pillars of that. Yeah. I'm very focused on the water side. Could you just talk generally about how water fits into this environmental program?
Well, we weren't doing much around water for years. Mm-hmm. And I guess the main reason would be we just didn't know what we could do to address that. But now, in the last couple of years, last 4 or 5 years, we've partnered with an outfit called Force Blue. These are all special ops military vets, combat divers. We're talking about Navy SEALs and Army Rangers and Air Force pararescue, folks with really highly developed underwater skills, as well as other skills. Force Blue is taking these folks kind of out of retirement, retraining them and redeploying them around marine conservation. So we hooked up with them. I think it's been almost 5 years now since we hooked up. And we wanted to do something in Miami for Super Bowl that would really make a difference. So we worked with them. We worked with marine scientists. We worked with local environmental agencies and others. And we put together this coalition to restore a section of coral reef along the Florida coast. That's our only barrier reef. That coral reef along the only barrier reef in the United States, and up to 90% of that now is either dead or dying because of disease and because of climate change. So what the scientists have done is they've developed a program where they create new genotypes of coral. I think right now there are like 80 brand new genotypes. And it's just when people say, what's a genus? Well, it's when you breed these corals, you breed them for certain qualities. So you find those corals that are already resistant, you breed them with other corals that are resistant, and boom, you've got a basic new genotype of coral that can resist climate change and resist ocean acidification. So we replanted.
You're sounding like a marine biologist right now.
Sorry.
By the way. No, don't be sorry. I'm just saying, okay, this guy's got some technical knowledge, some science knowledge.
You can't hang out with marine scientists on a boat for hours and hours and hours without picking up something by osmosis.
Yeah.
But we restored a small area as an experiment. It went very well. We went back the next year when we had Super Bowl in Tampa. Tampa is actually the place where the research is being done on coral. We went back and planted an area that was the size of an entire NFL football field. Now, if you fast forward a couple of years later, that entire area has come back to life. It's thriving. It's a thriving marine ecosystem with all kinds of flora and fauna underwater there, and it's spreading. The original football-sized reef now is starting to spread out and branch out into other areas and bring life back to that area. So that was our first really significant marine conservation project. And
100 yards of hope. Is
100
that
yards
right?
of hope.
Yeah, great connection, obviously, to the size of a football field.
Yeah, and now it's a documentary, a movie. Thanks to National Oceanographic and Atmospheric, they gave Forest Blue a grant to produce a 48-minute documentary, which is a stunning film. It's about restoring a reef, but it's also about restoring the lives of these military vets who've lost their sense of mission, lost their sense of purpose in their life, and now they've come back with this retraining, and now they're working on marine conservation, and they feel like they matter again.
So I guess part of the NFL's approach is you have all these franchises, they have stadiums, they're in cities, they're focused on kind of local initiatives, local sustainability and so forth. But then there's this idea that when the NFL goes around for the Super Bowl, for the draft, for other big events, you try to do something in those communities, environment related. That's kind of an overarching frame?
Yeah, the four big events we have each year: Super Bowl, Pro Bowl, the draft, and the kickoff. Oh, we also have the combine too. We don't have a program for combine right now, but we have a program for the other four big events. And like you said, they're in different cities all the time every year. So we get a chance to work in different areas of the country every year. And in each area that we go into, there's different environmental issues, there's different sustainability issues. So a big part of our job and our mission is to get in there early and often, at least a year in advance of one of these big events, and start meeting with folks locally, find out, get educated about what the environmental issues are in that community, so that we then can come back with some ideas that we can share about, well, we might have resources, we could do this project. You know, some of the standard things obviously are urban forestry, because we run into so many neighborhoods, particularly low-income neighborhoods and neighborhoods of color, where there is no tree canopy. And of course, no tree canopy means heat island effect. It means more pollution. It means less green space for kids to play in. So there's an awful lot of
Less
impacts.
capture of water runoff. Yep.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, more potential flooding from stormwater.
Yeah.
So we look at these, and then there's other neighborhoods that are food deserts, low-income neighborhoods of food. So we work with them oftentimes to build community gardens so folks can grow their own produce, feed themselves, and become more self-sufficient than they normally would be. So they don't have to do their grocery shopping at a gas store, convenience store, you know, which is what happens. And there are other things like restoring pollinator habitat, restoring native plant habitat, removing invasive species. So it varies so much from city to city and community to community. What is it that's a real hot button issue for that community?
Sure. So Super Bowl Miami, Super Bowl Tampa. Where did you go from there, and what other water projects happened, especially with your Forest Blue folks?
From there, we went to the West Coast and we started looking around again. We had Super Bowl in Los Angeles, and kelp forest recovery was a big issue. A lot of folks talked to us about it and how important it was. And again, you know, not to get too scientific-y.
You're talking to the right audience for it. Don't worry.
There, when the seal population was devastated by hunting out there, what it did was one of their favorite foods are purple sea urchins. Well, the purple sea urchins, then the population exploded. And so they moved into the areas where the kelp forests are, and they started munching everything because their predator, the seals had been hunted down too low, not to extinction, but pretty close. And so now these things were able to multiply with no restriction, and they started to eat everything. So they destroy kelp and they destroy a lot of other areas. Kelp forests can't come back. The red sea urchins, by the way, those are the good guys. So it's like white hats and black hats. The red sea urchins wear the little white hats. They're the ones that if you go in a sushi bar and they feed you sea urchin, it's the red ones. Purple ones apparently don't taste as good.
Good to know.
So Force Blue went down and removed thousands and thousands of these purple sea urchins from an area of kelp forest. And simply by removing them, even though it's temporary, by removing them temporarily, it gave the kelp forest a chance to sprout and regrow and become strong enough so it wouldn't be devastated as the population of purple sea urchins increased. So it basically gave them a new lease on life. So that was an incredible project because it's not just the kelp. It's everything that depends on the kelp, the entire ocean ecosystem that depends on these plants, just like with the coral reefs.
Sure.
The coral reefs, they like to say that that's the nursery of the ocean because so much depends on the coral reef environment in order for other things in the ocean to grow.
Yeah, the biodiversity in coral reefs is just off the charts. Yeah. Okay, so the Super Bowl keeps moving around. Then I think you went to Phoenix, right? Scottsdale area.
Then we go to Arizona.
You've got a unique battle for the Force Blue guys here.
Yeah, we called the Force Blue guys. We said, listen, big beach, huge beach, no ocean. So I don't know that we can work with you guys this year. But they actually came in and did some of their own research, and we did too, and started talking to folks, particularly the aquarium folks in Phoenix, who, in addition to running the aquarium, have their tentacles, excuse the pun, into so many other areas of the community in terms of water issues. So we worked with them and found out that the Lower Salt River, which is one of the main recreation areas for the Phoenix area, but it also is the main source of water for the Phoenix area. Well, the place was in kind of a mess. People had been taking their little aquarium snails that they got at the pet store and doing the nice thing, saying, well, they got too big for my aquarium, so I'm going to set them free in the wilderness. Well, they're an invasive species, so they've multiplied like crazy in the Lower Salt River, and they're called apple snails because it's a snail, but it's about the size of an apple, and they have no predator in our country because they're originally imported from Asia. So the same problem that we had with the sea urchins is they gobble up everything. They eat the eggs of other native fish and snails. They eat the plant life. So they pretty much destroyed the ecosystem of the Lower Salt River. The other piece of it was all the folks who go tubing down the Salt River all the time, who then have their cooler attached to their tube, finish a couple of beers, throw the cans in the water, and the river becomes polluted with trash. So Force Blue came in with their dive team and removed hundreds of these apple snails, which doesn't sound significant until you add in the fact that they also removed hundreds of thousands of their eggs all along the shores. The divers did that, plus we brought in community volunteers who would go up and down the shores and remove those. That reduced the next year's population by hundreds of thousands of these invasive species. And it's the largest community project that NFL has ever worked on because we've had 400 community volunteers join us, plus partners like the U.S. Forest Service and National Park Service and the local Maricopa County Sheriff's Office and all these other local environmental organizations, as well as the Arizona Cardinals football team jumped in and was incredibly supportive and engaged with us around this. So we had 400 local folks who did a lot of the cleanups along the river. And then when we got done, it made a significant impact on that ecosystem, something we never thought we'd see in Arizona. But here's the legacy piece that we like. We got a call several months later from one of the environmental organizations, and they said, hey, we just want you to know that of those 400 volunteers that came down here, they said at least half of them, maybe more, had never worked on any type of environmental or community project before. This is the first time they volunteered, and they volunteered because it was cool.
Yeah.
It was Super Bowl, it was
It's
NFL.
NFL,
It was
right.
like, hey, we want to be part of this. They said, but we just did a recent project, and we surveyed the volunteers, and more than 100 of the volunteers who showed up with us were among that cadre of people who had never volunteered before until Super Bowl came along. And our contact there said, now they're sort of part of this ecosystem because now that they've done it once and really enjoyed it and had a ball, now they want to do it multiple times.
Well, that's a great ripple effect right there, a great impact. I
Yeah.
think there was something else we talked about before, involved with one of your other events where there was a water project. Not Super Bowl.
The draft?
The draft.
Yeah, the draft in Arizona. We had, and we've been doing this for a little while, but the draft the draft in Nevada, in Las Vegas, this made a huge difference for us. We brought in a company that does water refills, and now it was actually less from our perspective about conserving water itself as it was about eliminating plastic. But by having water refill stations all through the outdoor event, what happened was they refilled enough water. They kept count. They refilled enough water from those stations over the course of 3 days to potentially eliminate 53,000 single-use plastic bottles just at that one event. So we're converts to that concept now. So when we had Super Bowl several months later in Arizona, the same thing applied. Brought in the same company. They're a company out of Canada that does this at big events everywhere. They came in and did the same thing, brought in all the water refill stations. We didn't get a count on Arizona, unfortunately, but we did get a really good, accurate count on the project in Nevada. So, it makes such a difference, and it's a simple thing to do.
So simple. And it has many impacts beyond just that bottle that's saved. That keeps plastic out of the environment. It keeps microplastics out of waterways.
Exactly.
It reduces all of the shipping impacts of shipping bottled water all around. So there's many other aspects to that. As water becomes more and more important in the US, you've got what's happening out west, lots of other issues. Obviously, it looks like this is a direction that NFL environmental programs is going to keep leaning into.
Well, as long as water is an issue, we're going to try when we're in a community to find some way to work with that and to address that as part of the broader mission of lightening the footprint of the event. So, for example, now that we're going back to Nevada, of course, we will use the water refill stations again, primarily to reduce plastic. But I think you made a good point that where's that plastic going to end up? That plastic eventually is going to pollute the ocean.
Yeah.
So it certainly is a water issue, even if it doesn't appear that on the front end. On the back end, it is a water quality issue. But the other thing is the severe drought that's all through the Southwest now. We're sensitive to that, and we've met with all the key players there, the Southern Nevada Water Authority and other organizations that are working intensely on these water issues. Lake Mead is the only source of water for Las Vegas and for the entire valley. Las Vegas has a great system. The water that's consumed in Las Vegas and in that urban area, all that water gets pumped out through an area called the Clark County wetlands. It's a man-made wetlands. That wetlands, like all wetlands, tends to clean water up a little bit as it flows through. From there, it flows to Lake Mead. From Lake Mead, it flows back into Las Vegas. So they've got a circular system to preserve water and to conserve water there. But here's the issue. Even still with the drought, Lake Mead has dropped lower and lower and lower. And all the communities that depend on the Colorado and the states that depend on Colorado River are having real issues with the lower flow of water that's coming through the Colorado River. And so many folks are dependent for their livelihoods and their life on that single water source. So we proposed to the Water Authority that we do a campaign, a water conservation campaign, where where we can put hang tags on the hotels when people come in when the tens of thousands of people come in for Super Bowl. We can put messages on the hotel televisions. We can put messaging on the website for the host committee. So when people go there to get information about the events and the schedules and transportation, they're also going to see messages that say, here's some steps you can take to conserve water. And here's why. And as the Water Authority told us in our original meeting, they said, if everybody came here, didn't take a shower, didn't drink water, didn't flush the toilet, it wouldn't make any difference on the ground. So maybe it's not a good idea. But our rejoinder to that was, yes, but all these hundreds of thousands of people that are going to come in here are going to see the messaging. And many of them will follow the conservation procedures, regardless of whether it has a practical impact. But the messaging will be there. So when they go back to everywhere else, when they go back to Michigan, and they go back to Pennsylvania, they go back to New Hampshire, and they go back all over the country, they're going to know probably for the first time in their lives that there is a water crisis in the southwestern United States, which most of us don't see. We turn on the tap, we get a drink, we turn off the tap. We don't think about the drought conditions and how serious it is. Not until we go to the grocery store and we're paying $20 a head for a head of lettuce because the farms have been devastated.
Sure.
There. We don't want that day to come. But so I'm back in Massachusetts, let's say, and my member of Congress is asked to vote on water conservation or drought relief measures and says, this isn't that important. But I can call my member of Congress and say, wait a minute, I was out in Nevada 2 years ago. I know how important this is. I want you to vote in this direction. And that was the winning argument with the Water Authority, because they said we hadn't looked at it. We only looked at it as a practical matter. We hadn't thought about what the awareness campaign might do on a longer term. And so I would say, without fear of contradiction, that they're all in on this concept now of let's get the message out to all these folks and let them spread it out across the country. So again, it may not make a difference on the Monday after Super Bowl, but it could make a big difference 3 years after Super Bowl when we're still trying to deal with this issue.
Public awareness is a powerful tool.
Yes.
And then you convert that awareness into action and advocacy. And that has a great effect all around the country.
Well, if public awareness wasn't important, you wouldn't be doing this.
That's right.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. Thank you. My last question is, a lot of people are fans of the NFL, like I am. Like I said at the beginning, a lot of people listening to this. Is there anything that they can do to really support the NFL as it, does these environmental programs and works on water sustainability? Is there anything people out there can do to help on this?
Well, I would take a different tack on that and say it's not so much about helping the NFL. I think that the strategies that folks can use in their own communities, in their own homes, are really to support the planet and humanity, as opposed to the NFL personally. Because all the things that we've talked about, whether it's water conservation, whether it's recycling, whether it's composting, whether it's renewable energy, whether it's protecting biodiversity, developing habitat, whether it's looking at ways to source food that can be helpful. All these things are things that can be done anywhere, regardless of what any of our sports organizations are doing. So we may create some awareness, but the issue really is, what are you going to do in your own community and in your own town? I mean, just like, my wife Susan and I, we try to do a lot of projects in our hometown as well too. We've done school gardens where the school kids come out and plant the gardens with us and become aware of it. We used to have a lot of problems with school gardens getting vandalized, but when you bring out like 200 kids and each kid owns one of those plants, and now you have a surveillance force that's going to guard that school garden, because they don't want, they may not want to defend the entire planet, but they sure as heck want to defend that plant which they put in and which they named Oscar or Penelope or something.
Well, like you said, with the volunteers in Arizona on the river, right? You converted them into stewards at that point from their work. So
that's exactly what the project did to them. It made them, well, we do engage with fans while we're at our events. So, for example, at one of the recent Super Bowls, we had a fan engagement project. We made a specially designed Super Bowl hat. It looked a lot like the other Super Bowl hats, except it came in a color that you can't buy in the store. It came in like a canvas with a blue striped color. It was pretty cool. It also had our NFL green logo on the back of the hat. And we would go around, we ordered hundreds of these, and my team would go around to fans at the various Super Bowl events. Also on game day, we would do it too. And we'd go up to folks and we'd engage with them and we'd say, hey, how would you like to win a hat? Well, now who doesn't want?
Everyone wants a free hat.
Who doesn't want? Yeah. Especially a Super Bowl hat. People steal Super Bowl trash cans. Of course they're gonna, if it's got a logo on it. So a hat, come on, I can wear the hat at home. We want to turn it into a story. So we would say to folks, for example, we would say, okay, I'm going to ask you an environmental question, and if you get it right, you win this hat. And oftentimes I'll say, if you get it wrong, you win this hat. No pressure. You're going to win the hat one way or the other. And then we would ask folks, name one thing that a person could do in their own life that would be good for our environment. And it's interesting. If you're above a certain age, which I won't give the number, but if you're above a certain age, most folks will say recycling. If you're below a certain age, if you're below about 15, the answers are all over the place. Drive electric cars, create less trash, compost your material. kids understand that there's a broad number of issues for this. So now we've taken something as maybe not glamorous as the environment. Maybe it's not glamorous to a lot of, not as glamorous as Super Bowl, but for this guy now, it's turned into a personal story, an exciting story that he can share with his buddies and kind of brag about when he gets home. So that's the kind of elevation we want to do around fan engagement. It's one thing to message your fans, to preach to them, to tell them, well, you should do this and you should do that. But we've just never felt that was effective with folks. It's in one ear and out the other. But if you can somehow change this so that it becomes something active, first of all, they were actively involved. They had to do something to get the hat. They didn't just get handed a hat, and then make it a story, make it something fun. So instead of saying, oh yeah, these guys were bothering me about, telling me I should recycle and stuff, all of a sudden it's like, this made their experience at Super Bowl even better.
Yeah.
So that's one of the ways we try and engage fans.
Sure. Yeah. Well, Jack, I am glad that I met you here at the Green Sports Alliance.
Likewise.
Yeah.
I'm glad we encountered each other.
And now that I've learned about what's happening around water, with each Super Bowl especially, I'll be looking forward to following along. In addition to seeing the game in the future, I'll be seeing what's happening with water. But
I know you'll be sitting there going bottoms up while you're watching. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
All right. My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode, and thank you to the sponsor, Open Water. To find all episodes, sign up for email updates, and connect on social media, visit waterloop.org.
You're in the water loop.